Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and tonight I am joined by special guest Mikey McNuggets of Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Mikey, I wish I could be having you on the show under different circumstances.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, those of you here are here for a reason, right? I'll get right to it. Our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Charlotte Hornets for the second time in as many games. But, dude, this was a weird game, like truly. And
Yeah.
coming off a dominant defensive performance in which the Cavaliers held the Hornets to 92 points overall on 43% from the field, including just 32% from three-point range. The Cavs followed that up by allowing the Hornets to score 118 total points, and they had 100 alone through three quarters. So just want to hand this one right off to you, man. The first thought that came to your head as the clock turned to zero.
Well, Charlotte hadn't scored 100 points in 2 weeks. They've been in 5 games. They hadn't broken 100 points in 4 quarters. They did that in 3 tonight. And it's one thing to get, lit up defensively. Teams are going to make shots. Like, you're going to have nights where teams get hot. But the fact that they couldn't get a stop at any point when they needed to, it's concerning. And then offensively, when they needed a bucket, like, it's going great when Sam Merrill's making 4 threes in the first quarter. You make 11 shots in a row. You get 19 or 21. I forget what Strus ended with, but in his debut back, he scores 21. Like, you shouldn't have problems scoring on Charlotte. And to see how much struggle and how much difficulty this team had down the stretch in the final 6 minutes, the final 5 minutes, whatever the number you want to go by is, it's concerning. And you look across the board, it starts with some coaching decisions. I don't understand how you call a timeout to set up an offensive play, which leads to Caris LeVert dribbling in a circle for 20 seconds and eventually traveling. Darius Garland has to be better down the stretch. I thought his decision-making was fine, but he had a couple opportunities to take some pull-up jumpers that he decided to pass out, which did not lead to buckets. The spacing's convoluted with 2 bigs. I still don't think that's their best clutch lineup, playing both Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley together. We could figure out how to do that better as the last 9 games go along. I know Evan just came back, but there are so many little things, Mac, that kind of all came to conclusion tonight that are just frustrating. And I keep saying, like, be patient and it'll all work itself out, but there's only 9 games left. Like, there's not a whole lot of time to see how this stuff works out, especially as guys continue to come back from injury, not at 100%. But I thought the late game offensive execution down the stretch and the inability to stop Micic, Brandon Miller, Grant Williams, Trey Mann, and Davis Bertans, that's an issue. That's an issue.
A lot of issues. And those of you who have been long-term listeners know that I am generally harboring a positive outlook on this team. And I try, just as Mikey says, I try to remain patient. I try to understand that this team has dealt with a ton of adversity this season, whether it be just straight up inability to put fresh bodies out there due to these injuries. But there comes a point where you have to figure out how to overcome some of these things. And then against the fucking Charlotte Hornets at that. I mean, a team that you just dismantled the game prior, and you come out and you have, the shooting percentages, they're going to be quite deceiving because overall, they say that the Cavaliers shot 49% from the field, including a very good 43% from three-point range. But the timing of some of these, it just didn't come at opportune times. That combined with the fact that you allow Charlotte to shoot 58% and 39% respectively themselves. And that just cannot happen.
Yeah.
Some of these, as you pointed to, some of this late game execution, especially from the likes of Darius Garland, it is a constant pattern. It's something that has been consistent with him. And I know this episode is titled Inconsistent Cavs, but one of the things that has been consistent lately has been the inconsistency of Darius Garland, especially down the stretch. And this is a player that I'm not going to say I stand for the guy, but it's definitely somebody that I've tried to levy a ton of support for, especially with everything that he has dealt with, whether it be the death of his grandmother or the on-the-court stuff, right? The injuries. I've tried to be very, very patient with him. And the stat line for him tonight reads 14 points, 12 assists. But, man, there comes a point where you just have to be able to count on your star players. And I feel like it's getting to a point with Darius, and I'm just like, can we really count on you?
No.
Can we count on you to put the team on your back the same way that we have seen so often with the likes of Donovan Mitchell? And this is by no means saying that Darius Garland is not capable. It's just we're not seeing that same Garland that we have even last year. And I get why that may be, but it doesn't make it any less frustrating. What does this team have to do to get this guy to play some consistent basketball, man?
It's the $1,000,000 question, Matt. What's frustrating about Darius is you see these short bursts where he looks like his old self. And I think part of the reason he struggled this year, people say you're giving him too much credit. Well, I think what I'm about to say, it's not an excuse, it's the reality. And I do think this has completely affected how he plays the game. When he broke his jaw, he lost 12 pounds, couldn't eat solid food.
Yes.
The NBA is now allowing more contact than they have in the last 5 years. Darius is a fragile guy. We saw him tweak his ankle again towards the end. I genuinely think he's scared to get into the paint, absorb contact like he used to, which has made him more reliant on his jump shot. Yeah. And he's having a bad shooting year. All the numbers back it up. You could find the games where he goes 7 of 10 and it looks great, but he follows it up with 1 of 9, 1 of 6, 1 of 7. And next thing you know, he's back to being 35% from three, which is frankly not good enough for the kind of player you need Darius Garland to be, especially with Donovan Mitchell sidelined with an injury, Mac. I feel like he's a little indecisive too, where he gets deep in the paint, and because he's not confident going up, he kind of gets stuck in no man's land and looks for these, I want to call them game breaker passes from NBA Street. And sometimes they're there.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
And it looks great when it works, but it also leads to a ton of turnovers. And today, for example, it was a nonchalant play, but the very first possession of the game, Mac, Cavs win the tip. Ball rolls all the way back to Darius. He comes up and he throws it past, and it's a turnover. It looks, I'm sure if it was a miscommunication on the set. I'm not sure if it's a miscommunication from what JB called to what Darius ran. I don't even remember who he was passing to, but the very, very, very first pass of the game was a turnover. And coming out, and I played D3 basketball. I'm not saying I ever played at a high level, but you go over that first play 74 times. I know enough dudes in the NBA. That's written on the board, your first play. And for whatever reason, the lack of communication not there from play one. It's one thing if it's on the fly in the fourth quarter, Mac, and you're running around. And this is talked about beforehand. And I just can't put the pieces of the puzzle together. I can't figure out why he can't get this stuff to click. If it is his relying on the jump shot, which it hasn't been falling. People go through bad shooting years. It happens. That's not the first time a really talented player has gone through a shooting slump that's been a prolonged period of time. Whether it's the fact that he doesn't truly understand how to play off ball, and now he's trying to overcompensate on ball with Donovan out, I don't know. I think he struggles the most with the lack of spacing from the two bigs, just based on his size. But it's the $1 million question, man. And every time he has a game like this, it's just harder and harder and harder to defend what Darius could be, because he just hasn't been that enough in the last 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, you look 2 seasons ago, 2 seasons in the All-Star year that he had. One of the things that is underrated about what the Cavs were able to put out there, that is floor spacing out of the front court via Lauri Markkanen. Something that you were able to do. It was a big body out there, that 3 big lineup out there, 3 7-footers. That was really, really pivotal in terms of not only perimeter space, but vertical spacing as well. And he didn't have to worry about guys stealing touches away from him, because he knew he was the bona fide number 1 option without Donovan out there. So he knew that there was nobody else that he could rely upon. You fast forward to year 1 of the Donovan Mitchell experience. He has somebody that he can fall back to. Those two are still clearly trying to figure out how to operate off ball with one another. And we know that Donovan, of the two, is better. He's the better player at playing off ball. Not only for the fact that he has a better feel for where to move around on the court. His strength allows him to move around some of the more physical defenses out there and cut to the basket and get a little more physical inside. Darius just cannot do that. He is not of that archetype. And then you come into this season, and he's been banged up. He's gotten a broken jaw. He's had a hand injury, had a couple of tweaks to him. He almost got injured again tonight. Then
face injury too.
Yes, the face injury. You wonder, just as you pointed out, how much does that play a factor in whether or not he is willing and wanting to be a willing participant in attacking inside. And you can clearly tell what the numbers bear out in regards to his finishing inside this season. Yeah. And he started off okay. And that was what was buoying the pretty abysmal 3-point percentages to begin this season. But that was before he was getting whacked upside the head even more. And, taking some more damage. So you have to wonder from a mental aspect if that has really, really fucked with him. Like, and to just to be as simple as that, I often wonder if now he is just fallen victim to being over reliant on that jump shot. And when that is not going, he just doesn't have anything to offer outside of playmaking from an offensive standpoint.
And with Donovan out, man, they're putting their best perimeter defender on him. Like you go to Minnesota, like Jaden McDaniels is hounding him. Jaden McDaniels is 6'8" with 6'11" arms. That's a terrible matchup for Darius. But without Donovan, you can afford to put your best perimeter defender on there. When
not only
Donovan's
that,
back,
but he's being doubled. Like he's seeing doubles now, and we know that he's just not physical enough to beat those the same way that a Donovan can do that.
Mm-hmm. And like we saw against Miami, and Charlotte tried to do it on Monday to a much lesser extent. I didn't really notice it tonight, but Miami was blitzing him off the screen, off the pick and roll, making him give it up. And Darius is a super talented ball handler, but he likes to dribble. And I thought against Charlotte, the first matchup, he made a couple quick decisions to beat the blitz, go 4-on-3 on the backside, give it up to Jarrett Allen, let him work. Against Miami, he was trying to out-dribble the blitz, and he's not – I don't love those chances right now with Darius the way he's playing. So they're finding ways to take him out of his game. He hasn't necessarily been as good as they need him to be. And frankly, this was a chance with Donovan out for Darius to reestablish himself, Mac.
Recapture the magic that made 2021-22 season so special. And I know there was like no pressure back then, right? There was not a ton of pressure on the Cavs. It was found money. It was, whatever term you want to throw at it. He was playing with a lot less pressure on him. Now the situation has changed. You have this pressure cooker of Donovan Mitchell's next contract. You have the Cavaliers' success in the playoffs, after last year's collapse, probably weighing on him with 9 games left on the season and trying to find some recapture that form that he had just last season. Because, people, they may not agree with this, but honestly, he had a better season last year than he did during his All-Star season in many respects. This year, it just has not been the case. There are reasons that you can point to, but at the end of the day, the rubber has to meet the road at some point, and you have to be able to overcome it. And Darius, for whatever reason, just has not been able to step up in the way that we all would have hoped he would. And I know, I don't know about you, but one of the things that I was looking most forward to during the absence of Donovan Mitchell was watching the chemistry being reestablished between him and Jarrett Allen. And in some respects, that has happened. But I just don't feel like he's having that same impact, that those two are not on the same page the way that they were just 2 seasons ago. So I don't know. It's maddeningly frustrating to drop a game like this that, the schedule has not done us any favors, and you're not going to get teams that are any easier to beat on your schedule than this with 9 games left to play. But obviously, Darius was not the only talking point tonight. We know that Max Strus returned after missing the Cavs, I believe, last 12 games.
12 games, yep.
And it has been a rough stretch without his floor spacing out there in that starting lineup in a lot of different regards. It was all for naught, right? His return ended in an L, obviously, but one of the things that really stuck out to me was just the ball movement, in particular, especially in that first quarter where he comes out and he drills the first basket of the game, I believe, from the right corner, and he was not shy about letting the basketball fly and pulling the trigger. And we know when he's out there, one of the things that I'm really, really paying attention to is just the pure movement and the gravity that he generates. And that was there from the jump. And one of the things that I do like, and very, very similar to what Merrill does, is the constant movement. One of the things that we know about him is that he is not a stationary shooter. He is not standing in the corners either. And it's something you just don't see from him regularly throughout the duration of the game. And tonight was no different. I believe his favorite shot, honestly, is the above the break triple. And I think he's taken
deep wing.
Yeah, he's taken 317 above the break triples prior to tonight. And I know that number is going to go up because that's where most of his 3-point attempts came from tonight. But just to kind of long-term, bigger picture outlook here, how much does the reemergence or reintroduction of Strus play into these last 9 games? What are you looking for?
It's huge. I mean, we'll start with tonight real quick, but Did he have 21 or 19? I don't remember exactly what he ended with. I think he had 21 off that little finger roll he had towards the end. He had 19 before that. But
Yeah. Yep.
he had 21 points in
19.
essentially 22 minutes left, 22 minutes of game action. What he brings to the court can't be understated. The movement. Him and Sam Merrill are the only guys who really come off screens in that regard in this offense. You have Niang, who's a great shooter, stays in the corner, does his thing in the corner. Dean Wade sometimes runs some action, but essentially they run stuff for Max Strus in the starting five. They run stuff for Sam Merrill with the bench five. Isaac Okoro stands in the corner, makes open threes, but they have so many more plays in the playbook they can go to with Max Strus on the floor. He's also a pretty good defender, a really good help defender. He's a better help defender than he is an on-ball defender, and that allows them to be more flexible defensively. But offensively, too, he's not just a shooter. He can create off the dribble. You saw that with that last little finger roll. And he could punish teams for closing out lazily, I guess is the right word.
Yeah.
Which is something that Sam Merrill can do, but it's not to the same extent. But big picture, Mac, he's one of the only guys you can say, come playoff time, I trust that guy to show up. Like, we still have to see Sam Merrill make a shot in the playoffs. And I'm telling you, this happens every year. Guys play great in the regular season. The lights get bright. We saw the entire Cavs team this happened to last season.
Mm-hmm.
There's a grand difference between making shots in the regular season and making the shots in Game 6 at MSG when the lights are as bright as humanly possible. George Niang has his flaws. I love George, my guy. Not the perfect player, but has played in a lot of big-time playoff moments. You feel pretty comfortable that he's not going to be scared of the lights. Max Strus was starting on an NBA Finals team last year in Miami, has been through wars with the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra. He's not going to be scared of the bright lights. You hope that Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland got their, oops, my bad series out of the way. I'm good now, and you know what you're getting from Donovan. So big picture-wise, getting him back for the playoffs was absolutely crucial because all the other Cavs role players, for the most part, they still need to prove it in the playoffs. Max, I ain't worried about him.
I'm not necessarily worried about him. Coming off a postseason appearance, I think he shot like 31%, right around 32% from 3-point range last season. I am a little worried that, coming in so late that he might have to try and get his rhythm. That is something that is kind of a concern to me just because we've kind of seen that be a constant theme with players league-wide when they're returning this late. But I know that having that experience is vital, having the gravity that he generates out there, especially in that starting unit when you're starting two non-spacing bigs, it is very, very important whether he's knocking down shots or not.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really glad to have him back out there.
And real quick, Max, I got to cut you off with the two non-shooting bigs in the playoffs too. Like, if Isaac starts on the court, they're not going to guard Isaac to start either. Like, he's going to have to make shots before they start guarding him. Same with Dean Wade, same with all these other guys who haven't proven they're going to make shots. So you really, if you put a lineup out there with Allen, Mobley, and Isaac, for example, alongside Darius and Donovan, you're kind of playing 2-on-5 on the perimeter to an extent, which is why guys like Niang and Strus, proven playoff shot makers, are so crucial, at least to open up the floor, create that space for Isaac and Dean and Sam and those other guys to get those opportunities after the defense realizes, all right, we can't blitz and double everything. We got to stay at home, and then these guys get more opportunities. So
that's essentially exactly what New York did last year with their blitzing.
Exactly what they did, yeah.
Yeah.
And Danny Green is not Max Strus. We're in a much better spot this year.
Right, and he can move, right?
Yeah.
Green is basically cooked, in that series last year. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to have him back. I will be even more excited to have Donovan Mitchell back, if I'm not mistaken.
Friday.
They said that he could be back by Friday.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
So I talked about this on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show today. We saw the report come out that Friday he's targeting a return.
Right.
I don't know what percentage he'll be at Friday. I'm not sure if that's 75. I feel good enough to play. If that's 100%. For the sake of this, Mac, let's hope it's 100% for Friday. But for the sake of this, let's say he's at 75, 80%. Would you bring him back now at 80%, or would you give him another 3-4 games to get back to 100% for a playoff push?
Man, sit your ass down. That's what I'm telling him.
Same thing.
It's competitive nature, right? Donovan Mitchell is an ultra uber competitive guy, and I'm sure every bone in his body is imploring him to play if he feels like he is even 50% to go out there. But long-term picture, we need this guy to have sustained playoff success. In order to get out of the first damn round, we're going to need Donovan Mitchell to be at damn near 100%. So, yeah, to answer your question, if it's 75, 80%ish, no, I feel like the Cavs currently seated where they're at, they can afford to have him maybe miss another game or two. But I do believe that you're going to need for this man to be able to establish some sort of rhythm, because we've seen him in some of these short stints where he's missed a couple of games and then come back. We've seen him come back kind of cold at points. And so we know how much how much rhythm plays into it, and chemistry is another thing, right? With Max having missed so much time, with Evan having missed so much time, getting Don back out there and getting really this entire starting five who hasn't played a large sample size of games together this season, getting them all out there and on the same accord. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I saw a stat that I think Royce O'Neal has played more minutes with the Suns' big three this season, and he was a midseason acquisition, a trade deadline pickup, has played more minutes with the Suns' big three than the Cavs' core four has played together all year, which it's hard to believe, but they've all been staggered. Their injuries have all staggered. Like, it hasn't been it hasn't been like, hey, everyone's hurt at once. It's been, all right, one guy's hurt. All right, then DG get hurt. Okay, Mobley's back, but now Donovan's out for a little bit. And it's just been hard to get, and it's not an excuse. Listen, every team with injuries, it is not, hey, throw this season in the trash, give everyone a pass, we got hurt. Like, that's not a valid excuse in today's day and age of the NBA.
Right.
Every team is dealing with injuries. We saw on Sunday against Miami, no Tyler Herro, no Duncan Robinson. They beat your ass by 50. Like, that, it's not a valid excuse. But it does give some credence to why some of these questions we still have, we've yet to get answers to, because we frankly haven't seen lineups we need to see to feel comfortable about heading to the postseason. But it is not an excuse. Like, JB Bickerstaff is not off the hot seat because guys have been. Darius Garland is not above any kind of criticism because he's playing with lineups sometimes that feature Marcus Morris and Tristan Thompson. Evan Mobley missing games has stunted his growth. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
He had a good season, but I think we all expected more from him in year 3 in terms of that next level of offensive game. The only guy who I think has truly lived up to everything we could have expected this season from him, I guess Donovan, but he's not eligible for all NBA teams. He's missed too many games for me to say he's fully reached that. No fault of his own, but it's Jarrett Allen. And outside of that, I think everyone else has been either below or just slightly below what you'd hope for in a season that was crucial for not just this team on the court, but for the future of whatever this team's going to be over the next 3-4 seasons.
I think that's fair to say. You know, I feel like I've been fairly positive on this team, but I do have to admit, like, some of these questions that we really needed answers to this year, we may not get answers to them, and it may ultimately cost them Donovan Mitchell. It is very, very possible that that's the case. I don't know what the likelihood of that is. Only Donovan does, and those close to him. But it just sucks, man, because I felt like there were so many things that we needed to see play out on the court, right? And especially from an evaluation standpoint, does the two big lineup work? Does the addition of Max Strus's floor spacing, does that aid enough to offset their inability to shoot the basketball from the three-point line? There are just so many different things that we are not probably going to have proper answers for. And I guess my question for you is, like, let's say that Donovan does enter the playoffs at less than 100%, and we don't get Dean Wade, who we haven't really talked about a lot.
They miss him a lot. He's a really good player. Good player.
Let's say that Donovan, though, specifically doesn't come back at 100%, and we lose in the first round. We just, maybe not necessarily a sweep, but we lose in the first round. Are you going to feel like that's going to cost Don?
I don't know if you want my truthful answer. Like,
bro, I'm all about honesty. I'm all about truth. Go ahead.
If they lose in the first round, barring some sort of crazy catastrophe where, like, Jalen Suggs turns into Michael Jordan, like, barring that, JB Bickerstaff's fired for sure. I feel very confident in that assessment. Yeah. I think if they do anything, if they don't reach the Eastern Conference Finals, I think a coaching change is imminent. I think there's a good chance Donovan asks out. And if he asks out, that means Kobe Altman's getting fired. We're going to have a entire new front office regime. And you bring in a new front office, and that means everyone else is on the table.
Rebuild.
Darius signed the extension with Kobe. The decision on Evan Mobley and what you do with him moving forward, is under a new GM. What does this new GM think about Evan Mobley? He didn't draft him 3rd overall.
Right.
Max Strus signed a $64 million contract. He's a good role player. It's a very tradable contract. Like, you can flip that for assets to some other teams that need shooting. So it's a scary thought to go down. But if this playoffs don't go well, even if Donovan's hurt, like, it only takes one domino to make this whole thing turn into an avalanche. And we use Cavalanche when things are going right. Yeah. I'm not sure what the opposite of a Cavalanche is. Maybe it's just an avalanche. But it can literally be an avalanche of a series of unfortunate events leading all the way down. Because if you're Donovan, and you got to be honest with yourself, right? Like, Donovan isn't, as you mentioned before, the ultimate competitor. He wants to win an NBA championship. Like, that is, I don't believe every player when they say that. I've spoken to Donovan enough to know, and I've seen him off the court enough to know, like, those words aren't just lip service to him. Like, he means when he says, I will do anything in my power to win an NBA championship. And I do think someone said a catastrophe. That's good. I don't know if I can put that in there, but that is a very, Nate, very good. I do know Donovan is serious about that. And while I do think you could look at it in a vacuum and convince yourself that Cleveland's the best basketball opportunity for him, he's played the 2 best seasons of his entire career in Cleveland with Darius, with Jarrett, with Evan, under JB Bickerstaff. I think you can make a case that the best basketball situation for him is right here in Cleveland. But if you're Donovan, how confident can you be betting on Darius, Evan, and Jarrett being your running mates? Is that a trio good enough to be 2, 3, and 4 to lead you to a championship? How confident are you in JB Bickerstaff to be the head coach to do it? And if it's not JB, who is it? He'll certainly have a say in that decision if it's not JB. But this was an audition year for a lot of those guys to prove to Donovan, hey, I know you might be winking or you might be flirting with these other teams, Brooklyn, Miami, the Knicks, whoever, Los Angeles. Look what you got here. Like, look what, it's a pretty damn good situation here. And without him, he just watched his team lose to the LaMelo Ball-less Hornets. So you see what I'm saying? Like, it's tough. And hopefully we don't get to that situation, but it has the potential to be a catastrophe, as Nate said in perfect fact.
That's a good one, man. That really is a good one.
Kudos to you, Nate. I'm not sure who you are, Nate, but kudos to you. That is a very, very well-timed comment.
One of the things that you just mentioned is about auditions, right? And we know that the 2 biggest names in regards to that are often associated with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. So I have to ask your opinion on this comment down here from Devontae Broom, because I've seen this consistently be suggested by more than just one Cavs fan out there. And it is that Darius Garland and Evan Mobley are glorified bench players at best. What are your thoughts on bringing them off the bench?
Listen, they stagger their minutes enough that it's not like Mobley and Allen always play together. I do think in crunch time, this Cavs best lineup involves 1 big. And that means Evan on the bench. So if you want to consider him a bench player because he's not in your crunch time 5, so be it. He's going to play 35 minutes. I think he's your 3rd or 4th best player on the roster. He's not a bench player. Evan Mobley is a good player. Like, if he doesn't get any better for the rest of his career, Mac, he plays 15 years in the league, averages 16 and 10, 2 blocks a game, and is a super solid starter that everyone talks about as, oh yeah, he was pretty good. Solid. He has the potential to be very, very good. He hasn't reached it yet, but I do believe that potential is still there. I don't think he fits in the Cavs crunch time 5 right now, which is an issue because you would like your 3rd or 4th best player to be on the court when it matters most, but I don't think offensively that 2 big lineup is conducive to the spacing they need to score when defenses lock in the most. As for Garland, he's been so inconsistent this year that I understand the frustration, but my question is, if you put him on the bench, and I'll use the crunch time 5 as the example for this, if he's not out there, who are you putting out there? Who's your secondary creator? When
they would argue Karis LeVert would be that guy alongside Donovan.
We saw what Karis did tonight when he had a chance. Like, Karis is as hot and cold as anybody in the league. Like, he could score 50 and he could score 3 the next day. And you'd probably be like, yeah, that's Karis. So I get the frustration. I really do. I just don't know if they have a better option late in games right now than Darius as the secondary creator when teams get the ball out of Donovan's hands. It's going to happen. Like, I'm telling you right now, come playoff time, teams are going to blitz Donovan, force someone else to beat them. And I'm not sure if I trust anyone more than I trust Darius. And that's with the caveat of, I don't even really trust Darius. I'm just not sure there's a better option.
What the better option is. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I mean, for me, I'm not even entertaining the idea of Darius Garland or Evan Mobley coming off the bench to begin games. As you pointed
Yeah,
out,
me
too,
either.
closing games might be a little bit different, especially in regards to Mobley, who, just for purely spacing concerns and just having one true big out there alongside maybe Dean Wade or George Niang, depending upon how a game's going. That to me is important, but it's not big enough for me to say, hey, I'm going to bring these guys off the bench to begin games. That said, I guess one of the questions that I had kind of moving forward here is looking at this schedule, man. It's a
Tough.
potential gauntlet moving forward.
Tough.
You got Philly, you got Nuggets, you got Jazz. I mean, that is what it is. Phoenix, LA,
I don't think we
Clippers.
could say that is who it is after tonight. Like
You're
all
right.
these
You're
games
right.
could be a dogfight.
You're right. You're right. Fair enough. Fair enough. It will definitely be a dogfight. And just to throw this out there, Cleveland fans, this team is who they will face the final game of the season. And as crazy as this season has been, it is very, very possible that that game will matter. It is,
Yeah.
that sucks to say that this Charlotte team in the final game of the season, that could definitely be a game that matters in regards to seeding. So there's a question in all of that. And the question is, what do you think the Cavs will have to do? What is the record they're going to have to go with to not drop below the 4 seed here?
So we did if they went 6-10, and that
Mhm.
included tonight. So they have to go 6-3 now the rest of the way to reach 50 wins.
Yep.
7-2 to reach the 51 plateau they went last season. 8-1 to get to 52 wins now
Mhm.
and improve upon it. I know did the Knicks win tonight? Did they play tonight?
I know they played tonight, but I do not know if they won.
So they were right up. I would
They
not
did. They blew the doors off of Toronto, 145-101. God damn.
So have they passed Cleveland? So is Cleveland now in the 4 seed?
I mean, I'm checking the standings as we speak, but no, the Cleveland as it stands 44-29. I think if this is updated, New York 44-28. May not be updated yet.
Well, 44-29 is half a game below 44-28, so it is updated. So yeah, the Cavs are in the 4 seed now. So they have to stay. You like to go 6-3, right? Like you still play Charlotte again. That better be a win to close the season. You play Indiana in the second to last game. You play Memphis late. You hope those 3 are wins right there, right?
Mhm.
Indiana late. They're banged up. It's a game that you may not show a ton, but for the Cavs and positioning, it probably means more to them than it does to Indiana. But also Indiana might be playing for a play-in spot. So I guess that's a toss-up. Memphis is a team you better beat. They're trying to lose at this point. Charlotte, I know they beat you tonight, but at that point, I think a win would actually hurt them. So they may do everything in their power to give you a W. You got both LA teams on the road. That's tough. I hope 6-3.
Mhm.
6-3. Maybe that's wishful thinking because they're 8-12 after the postseason, after the All-Star break. So that would be quite the turnaround. But at the end of the day, record be damned. They need to be playing better basketball entering the postseason, or it's going to be a really short stint come April and May, because this caliber of basketball we've seen for the last 3 weeks now, essentially,
Mhm.
it's just not going to cut it on a night in, night out basis against teams who only get to see you and become more comfortable with you game in and game out. The scouting reports get more detailed. And I don't think JB Bickerstaff's a bad coach. I don't. But he hasn't proven that he can make adjustments game to game in the playoffs yet. Like, that's something we still have to see from JB before anyone can truly believe he has that capability. He was outcoached by Tibbs last season. He got circles ran around him the year before in the playing game they lost. So I have a hard time believing that if they don't find a way to start playing more cohesive, better offensive and defensive basketball down the stretch, which you would hope would happen when Donovan comes back naturally,
Yeah.
we might have a couple of depressing post-game pods, just like we did last year in the playoffs.
I really hope not,
Which
but I
sucks
have to
because there was
acknowledge.
so much freaking excitement about this team like 3 months ago. Like,
I mean, we
that-
were we
that's the
were
part that
singing
hurts.
songs here, man.
It's very frustrating. This team annoys the crap out of me, Mac, because you know how good they can be, and they show it in these short stretches, and then they find ways to shoot themselves in the foot. And you have these simple questions that you would hope to have answers for, and no matter how close you get to getting the actual answer, like, psych, They pull it away. Like that dollar on the fishing rod.
Yeah, you got to be quicker than that. Yeah.
Killing me.
Oh man, I want to be seriously upset at this team, and at the same time I'm like, well, man, there's different reasons why I could point to, but at the same time there comes a point where you just have to let the excuses die, and you have to play up to your potential. And even without Donovan Mitchell out there, even without Dean Wade out there, this team has more than enough talent to get the job done. They should have been able to win this game tonight. We saw what they were capable of just the game prior against this very same team. And so they're just a very inconsistent team, and inconsistent teams and postseason, that doesn't mix well. And so I'm looking at potential matchups here, and I'm just like, man, did the Cavs really stand a chance playing like this? Because I know the answer. I know what they're capable of, but playing the way that they have, being as inconsistent as they have, do they even have a shot against some of these teams come the postseason? So my question for you, I guess, here, before we get ready to hop out, is looking at potential matchups, whether it be in New York, whether it be Orlando or Miami or Indiana.
Indiana's the answer. We has to be Indiana. We need the Pacers. They are equally as inconsistent. Tyrese Halliburton's hurt. I don't even need to hear the end of the question to know Indiana is the team the Cavs have to do everything in their power to match up with in the first round, barring they get to the play-in. We need them to actually win a few games to stay above the 7 and 8 seed.
Yeah.
And hopefully catch them in the 3-6 matchup. Orlando's my second choice, but they have two elite defenders in Jonathan Isaac and Jalen Suggs. And they're a wonky, weird physical team that I'm terrified that come playoff time, when the whistles get even fewer and fewer between, that physicality can be something the Cavs can't overmatch. But Sam Merrill is the human torch against Orlando, so maybe that's your counteract there. However, Tyrese Halliburton's been terrible since the hamstring injury. I saw he shot 19% from 3 in March.
Yeah.
If your best player is shooting 9, you guys want to complain about Darius Garland missing shots? Go watch an Indiana Pacers game where their best player is shooting 19% from 3 on equal volume, and they're just not a team that scares me. They don't play much defense. If the Cavs, even without Donovan at 100%, can't get past Indiana in the first round, then everything we thought this team could accomplish, it was all a fugazi. Like, it was all mirage in the desert where we're just dehydrated. So that is my ideal and, frankly, the only first-round matchup I would feel very confident in right now, saying the Cavs should advance to the second round against.
Is there a team you want to avoid at all costs?
In the 3-6 situation, or if they fall to, like, I don't want to play the Knicks.
3-6. Let's say 3-6.
Yeah, I don't want to see Miami at all. Like, Spo's a zombie. It's the Walking Dead. You can't kill them. They're cockroaches. They just keep coming back and back and back. Philly, if Embiid's 100% healthy, obviously I just don't want to see him and Maxey. Embiid's a monster. He always kills Allen and Mobley. He kills everybody. So it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
But if I had to rank those teams I want to see least, I don't want to see Miami. I don't. I put Philly second. If Embiid's 100% back, I think they bump Miami, but I don't think he'll be 100% by the time he comes back. And then Indiana's a team I want to play. Absolutely. And Orlando is somewhere in between all of those. And you could ask me tomorrow, I'll change my opinion on them. But right now, after what I saw tonight, I don't want to see Orlando.
Fair enough. And I
do you
guess
feel the same way?
I do. I mean, before this stretch started, pre-All-Star break, I'm like, man, bring whoever on. We'll beat them the fuck down.
They're playing great. They were playing phenomenal basketball.
Everything's great, but post-All-Star break, where things have just been off the rails, guys have been missing time. There's no cohesion. There's no consistency. The Cavs could legitimately lose to anybody they play on any given night. And that is a very sad thing for me to be able to say, because I consider myself an optimist, but I have to look at the reality being presented to me and just acknowledge the fact that this team is just not playing up to its full capabilities. Injuries be damned. You got to see this team start to string together some games to close out the year, man.
Let me ask you this real quick. Do you think, from the flip side, we're looking at who the Cavs would want to play?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Miami and Philadelphia and even Indiana, to an extent, are they looking up towards the standings and being like, we don't want to play Boston. We sure as hell don't want to play Milwaukee. Like, oh, that 3-6 match. Like, that's actually where we want to be. Like, has it come to the point where the Cavs are now the team that these lower seeds are targeting to play?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Boston, they're tiers above everybody else in the East, maybe even in the NBA. Milwaukee, they have Giannis, and as long as you have a player like Giannis, they can do almost anything on any given night. And so, of those three teams, if I am a Miami, if I'm in Indiana, if I'm in Orlando, or Philadelphia for that matter, depending upon where this team falls, I'm looking at the Cavs and saying, you know what? We know that this is an inexperienced group. We know that the head coach has not proven anything beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'm saying of those three teams, absolutely, I would want to face the Cavs because they've not shown me anything that says that that they're up to the challenge. And you see, the Miamis of the world. We know how much coaching experience matters in this type of scenario. Spoelstra, we saw him run proverbial laps around JB the other day with the full court press in the zone.
That was tough.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, man. I just to answer your question in short, yes, I believe the Cavs are a team that everybody in the let's say 5 to 8 range is looking at and saying they're a team that we can beat in 7 games.
And that's not a good place to be entering the playoffs.
I never thought I would be saying that, like with the way this team was going, to begin the year, even up to the All-Star break. I did not think I had it in me to admit that, but I mean, here we are. And maybe it's just pure emotion and reaction after tonight's loss. Ask me tomorrow, maybe my opinion changes, but for tonight at least, no, man, this team deserves every bit of criticism that fans have been saying. And if you want to say, if you're going to go out and criticize the Cavs, I'm not going to have a rebuttal tonight, guys. I mean,
we said before we started, it was like, today is the day that the people who have been extra critical of JB and Darius and Evan to an extent, and the entire Cavs organization, if you want to go crazy, tonight's your night to go crazy. There is no defending what we saw on the court tonight. There's no excuse. And Mac, I think you do a really good job on Twitter of trying to put a little context to some of the negativity. And I think maybe you're a little bit of an optimist, probably to an extent that I don't necessarily think I would go, but hey, Twitter needs more of that than the other side. So I give you a lot of kudos, but there's nothing we can say tonight to defend what we saw. And at the end of the day, this is now 2 of their last 3 games. We've came on a post-game pod or I've come on a post-game pod and had nothing good to say about a performance.
And that's sad. That is really sad. Usually I have at least one thing tonight. I guess if you want to say, if anything, the return of Max Strus. That's a solid thing. There are small things you can pick and choose, but overall, the overarching theme here is just not playing up to your potential. I think that's a pretty good place to leave it at. Thank you all for tuning in. As I always say, if you'd like to reach out, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com. And Mikey McNuggets needs no other argument other than the fact that you can catch him daily on Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Outside of that, Mike, you got anything you want to plug, man?
Not really, other than the fact that the Cavs need to win so we can come on here and have a joyous occasion podcast, Matt, because we were supposed to do one Sunday. You got called into daddy duty, so I went solo, and that was a miserable solo pod. Today was at least nice to have someone to bounce some ideas off of and not just sound like a miserable bitch crying to myself. So, we'll do this again, and hopefully it'll be after a nice Cavs win. And I just want to say one last thing. There are 82 games in the regular season. No one loss is crippling. No one win changes you from a contender to the title favorite. Take everything with a grain of salt. It is just one game, but certain games sting a lot worse. So yeah, be pissed off. You have every right to be pissed off, but this Cavaliers team has bigger issues than what happened tonight. It can be fixed. There are 9 games to fix it. There's a whole postseason, and Donovan's coming back on Friday, allegedly. So hopefully that turns the ball rolling in their favor, but there is no rebuttal and no defense for what we saw tonight. So if you want to get your shots off, you have about 48 hours to do so before there's a chance that myself or Mac or Tony or Justin or Carter or whoever else wants to try and put some context to it. There's no context for what we saw tonight. That was a bad loss, and frankly, an unacceptable performance from a team that needs to be playing better down the stretch.
Well said, McNuggets. I can't follow that up, so I'm just going to say, go Cavs.
Go Cavs. Later, guys.